Alrighty, guys, welcome back to the Left of Str8 Show interviews, the premier podcast that shares the stories of our amazing LGBTQ community and, of course, fantastic straight allies, all from entertainment, foodies, books, music, and advocacy. I'm your host, as always, Scott Fullerton, and let's start talking. Alrighty, friends. Today I'm honored to welcome a remarkable voice in both the legal and creative worlds to the show. Lance Collins is here, hailing from the beautiful island of Maui, Hawaii. Lance has built a notable career as an attorney while simultaneously becoming a leading advocate for the rich history and culture of his homeland. In addition to his legal work, he's edited an impressive series of 15 books about West Maui, preserving and celebrating the unique stories of the region. Lance now steps into the world of film as the writer of the upcoming LGBTQ-themed movie, My Partner, which I had a chance to see over the weekend. It's a project that promises to captivate an audience with its heartfelt narrative and definitely cultural depth. Join us as we delve into Lance's multifaceted career, his passion for Hawaiian culture, and the exciting journey of bringing My Partner to life on the big screen. But first, take a look.
Learn to work together, or I can't give either one of you passing grade.
Get in the back and let your friend right up front.
Not my friend.
Take Emar up Mocha. We'll show him why we're serious about our bite.
After today, I feel like I'm part Hawaiian.
Basta, huwag mo kaming pagkapalit sa mga Hawaiian.
Ipagbalik na ako kay Ira.
Ano?
Just do your thing and I'll do mine.
I don't want to.
Alrighty, we are back. That was the trailer for the new film, My Partner, written by my special guest today, Lance Collins. Lance, welcome into the studio, my friend. How are you?
Aloha. I'm doing well. How are you?
Aloha yourself. I'm so excited about this movie. I got to screen it over the weekend. Thanks for sending me a copy of it. This is exciting stuff. This is a beautiful story, my friend.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We're very excited that it's about to be out and about.
It's getting ready to stream everywhere and hopefully some limited release in theaters. Tell me about this journey from attorney to film writer. How did you decide to take this on? I mean, you've been editing these books already. Is this your first film project, or have you done anything in the past like this?
So this is the first film that I basically wrote the story for. That became a film, but actually I have been involved in a couple of other things. In the late 90s, a friend of mine in college did a movie about Hawaiian transgenders called Ke Kulana He Mahu, and I kind of helped with some of the storytelling in that, but actually they interviewed me. And then about 15 years ago, a short story of mine was turned into a movie in the Philippines, a gay-themed movie in the Philippines. But I wasn't actively involved in it. I think I had a cameo, but that was the extent of my participation.
I love that. We'll talk about that. Growing up in the islands there and everything, how did your upbringing kind of influence your passion for advocating for Hawaiian history and their culture?
Sure. So I grew up in a working class family. My father was a carpenter, and then my mother went back to school and she became a school teacher. And so my life was mostly around working class folks, and maybe people don't know this about Hawaii anymore, but Hawaii was dominated by basically this minority rich people government that controlled sugar plantations, and all of the working people lived on them. And so there's this very rich sort of working class history about Hawaii, and it influences the way that working class communities exist today in very subtle ways. And there isn't a lot of history that's told from that perspective. It's always what did the king or queen do, or what did the American overlord do, and doesn't really focus on what was going on with the people. There's not a lot of that kind of history, and so that became a passion of mine. Is let's tell these stories so that everybody knows and can be inspired in a wider range of what to do. So just one little brief plug. In our newest book, there's a chapter about a man named Kaomi who's half Hawaiian, half Tahitian, and he was the lover of Kamehameha III, and for 2 years he was treated as the co-king until the religious faction of the royals basically kidnapped him and had him killed. So it's those kinds of stories that you don't hear about in high school or you don't hear about anywhere that can definitely change the way that you think about history and the way that you think about the future.
I love that, and especially anything that has to do with some kind of a queer or LGBTQ theme is always underrepresented as well. So just that you're able to kind of find that kind of a history and expand upon it is pretty amazing. So I love that. So that's going to be in one of the upcoming. We talk about. I mean, you did like 15 or so books about West Maui and everything. Talk about the editing on those and what does that entail? What were you doing with those?
It's like herding cats. Most of them are edited volumes. We have a few that are like one author or two authors writing the whole books, but there's a range, and so the ones that have like the interesting historical stuff, well, they're all very interesting. But the ones that have the short historical vignettes, like Kaomi, the one that this book that just came out, yeah, it's like 8 different people have written a chapter about some aspect of Hawaii history that involves West Maui that isn't really focused on. And so, we've been doing it for about, 15 years now. And it's a slow process. Sometimes they happen very quickly, and sometimes people need a lot of extra time, and things happen, and COVID happened for a while. So we had nothing come out the COVID year. And then the next year we had like 4 books come out because everybody was impacted by all of that. But all of that, I would say, in different ways, that sort of viewpoint and that way of approaching life informed how my partner came about as a story, and a story that ended up being told.
Well, that was one of my questions here. Give me the basis of the genesis of the story. What kind of kernel did this come from? Was it kind of come to you whole cloth? How long did it take for you to bring the story to life before the film part?
So I was working with Keli'i on some other projects, and then we were able to get a conditional grant to do a web series about a slice of life in West Maui. And he got a writer, we got a writer, and then the writer ghosted. And then we got another writer, and then the second writer ghosted. And then we got a third writer who, he was giving me like weekly updates, and then he blew past the deadline. And I was like, oh, can you just give me a couple pages so I can show that we're like making progress? And then he ghosted. And so I went to the grant people and I said, oh, can we have an extension on our grant, because like we're encountering this problem and we won't meet the condition of having a script. And they basically said, why don't you reapply when you're ready? And in my mind, I was like, okay, well, this was never going to happen if we don't finish it. And so I actually completely cleared my calendar, almost of everything. There were a few court things, and I was the chair of the county charter commission, so I couldn't get out of that. But basically everything else I completely like rearranged. And for 6 weeks, I wrote 10 hours a day, 6 days a week. I'd wake up, I'd go surfing, I'd come back, and I would write for 10 hours, go to sleep, repeat. And I did that for 6 weeks. And then I came up with an 8-part web series, which of course is not my partner, but we met the condition for funding. And then Keli'i said, oh, now ask them if we can just do a movie, because we don't have enough money for what you've written. And so we did, and we got approval for it to just be a movie instead. And because I wrote it, then it was a boys' love story. But that wasn't actually a part of the original. I mean, it wasn't something that we could or couldn't do. It was just unstated. Right. It just said a slice of life. And I decided, well, I want to do a romantic oriented film. And because I'm the one that's doing it, I wanted to be boys' love.
I love that. And tell me about your journey as part of the community. Tell me how that all started out. What kind of a kid were you growing up? When did you start finding an LGBTQ tribe?
So, it's interesting. I think I might have had, for my age, a slightly unusual experience. So first of all, I'm part Filipino, and when I was growing up, my aunts and my uncles, even though they're the same age as me, I was always teased for being bakla, and I was, that's like gay, transgender. It's a slightly different identity than the Western thing, but I always was wondering, like, well, how do they know? Like, I'm not sure I know. How do they know? But because that's just a cultural thing. And so fast forward to when I become a teenager, and I basically had a huge crush on high school senior from another school, and I started writing in poetry. And yeah, and then somehow in between all of that, my father discovered these poems, and that was I mean, it wasn't like, I don't know if this was a big shock to anybody, but he discovered them, and so that was basically, I mean, if there was any secret before then, after that point, there was no secret.
Wow.
And I was very involved in politics as a teenager, mostly local politics. And so there was a organization, like a social organization, community organization called Both Sides. Called Both Sides Now, and it was they had like a monthly paper and that sort of stuff. And they asked me, I wasn't even 18 yet, to be on the board, which I agreed to. And I was also there was also this youth group that Both Sides Now co-sponsored. That I would go to. Anyways, they got me on the board, and I always wonder if they put me on the board because I ended up being the one that would drive the newspapers to all of the locations that they were supposed to be dropped off at. I ended up having a
Lance
car.
will do it.
Yeah.
Just get Lance. Lance will do
Yeah.
it.
We'll make him a board member, and so yeah, and so that was sort of in Maui. That was how it all started, and. I don't know. It's a little unusual for my age group how it happened, but it's not like I'm not exceptional. I'm not the only one that was like that. But I think maybe now younger people, it's more common. But when I was growing up, it definitely wasn't very common.
Yeah, talk about, I mean, the LGBTQ scene at different islands and everything. I mean, like I said, told you off air, I've been to Honolulu 5 or 6 times, and I've been to Kauai once or twice. I know in Honolulu you have hulas and you have that place upstairs, but I don't know that many areas there. What is the community growing there? Is it kind of stay the same? I mean, how does it kind of work with island life?
Well, there's sort of a overlapping, and partly has to do with tourism, but there's sort of a overlapping communities. And so, like, I would say, like, newcomers constitute sort of, one community and are overrepresented at the bars and the clubs. And then there's the local communities, and there's some overlap. I'm not saying it's like there's two separate things.
Right.
That is much more like friend-based, or like from high school or childhood. People make connections with other people and then basically create these webs of friendships. And so there's sort of like a range of communities that sort of in some ways overlap, and the bars and the clubs are a scene where that happens. But there's also not that. So like in Maui, there used to be a Hamburger Mary's up until the 90s.
Right.
Yeah, and it was like very prominently located and stuff, and then it closed down, and then there were like 2 lesbian bars that were competing with each other and eventually ended up shutting each other down. And then there was like a straight club that once a week would have like LGBT night. And I'm talking about Maui, and then that eventually ended. I mean, now that there's smartphones, it's like the whole dynamic of LGBT segregated public spaces has completely changed because of, I guess, the smartphone revolution. And so how people basically create spaces of friendship intimacy or romantic intimacy and stuff is now very different. Although in Honolulu, it's large enough that it's still Hula's is still there. And there's 1 or 2 others that also cater to the LGBT community.
And talk about the resources, maybe. What are the resources like then, since the community is more kind of apart in Maui and there is some kind of a semblance of a community in Honolulu? How are the resources? Are the resources keeping up with the needs of the community?
So I would say in Maui, the Department of Health uses grants and other things to pursue, public health oriented types of services for youth in particular. We do have the Maui AIDS Foundation, and they've been very successful. I think they were actually the first. I'm not 100% sure, but they've been around for like decades, and I think they were one of the first organizations that dealt with folks who had HIV and were suffering from AIDS complications before I think any other island was doing that. And so There is a robust framework to provide services.
Nice.
Despite the fact that Maui, even though it has a huge tourism population, especially during the summer, is really a very rural area. And so
Okay.
I think we just benefit from some of the ways that government in Hawaii is organized. So we get certain benefits that maybe other rural areas wouldn't get.
Yeah, because we're so used to in the States, different community organizations like the P flags and the local pride centers and things like that. So I'm just wondering how that kind of compared if they were able to build that kind of a community there.
So yeah, both sides now, eventually the people who were doing it, and it was around for decades, it eventually sort of came to an end, and then there was a new organization that popped up, and then there was some controversy there, and then that closed. And so now there's what they call Aloha Maui Pride. And they have monthly brunches. The first Sunday of the month, they have a brunch at Nalu's. And then they were regularly having movie nights, although I haven't seen the ads for that lately. And we did screen my partner at one of their movie nights. It was one of their better attended nights. And then they have an annual Pride week thing that occurs in June.
Oh, that's great.
So yeah, so there is something there, and then of course there's like regular drag performances that I think sometimes are co-sponsored by Aloha Maui Pride, and then sometimes not. So yeah, the whole transgender community is sort of I think partly because of cultural differences in Hawaii, sort of is an autonomous community that probably has a lot more power and influence than I think perhaps transgenders historically have had in like the U.S. continent.
Wow. Now talk about how did your path, you do all this writing stuff now and everything. How did the path to lawyering become part of you? Where did that come from?
I got
politics
pushed.
interest or from
Well, I got pushed by my family and friends. I was actually in graduate school, and I thought eventually I was going to become a professor and be a community organizer, and just circumstances and everything, and they were able to sort of push me over to. So when I finished law school, it wasn't in my mind that I was going to become an attorney. Still, it wasn't until it was like, oh, you have to take the bar. I'm like, well, why? It's like, well, because you just went to law school. It's like, oh, okay, and so I did, and then I got my license and I started practicing, and I've basically done community interest, public interest litigation since.
Sounds like you're such an advocate. I just kind of looked over it briefly. You're such an advocate for your community. That's amazing. So good on you for that.
Oh, well, thanks. And my big hope is that other people, like I'm not the only one. And so, I mean, that's one of the things that if any of your listeners are not sure what they want to do with their life, please consider doing community organizing, because we can never have enough.
Agreed. Well said. All right. So you have this grant program that you're looking to get into. So you write this film for it, kind of basing a little bit on stuff that you know. How did it go into being created? Did they find the directors and everything? Did they kind of have you help find the team? Was it collaborative? Where did the team come together for this movie?
Sure. So actually, it was Keli'i and I that got the grant, and Keli'i's the director. So
okay.
so so it was one of those things where he didn't want to start asking people until we had like confirmed that we were getting money, because you don't want to tell people, oh, there's this project, and then it falls through. So when it did, then he started assembling who he was going to get, and we did casting calls, which was very interesting, and maybe your viewers will find this interesting. So originally the script was in Ilocano, which used to be the predominant Philippine language in Hawaii. My mother's not an Ilocano, although she does have family members, blood relatives who are Ilocano, and of course my spouse is Ilocano. Anyways, it was in Ilocano, and we put the casting call out, and we got 0 responses. And I mean, I previously taught in the Ilocano language program at the University of Hawaii, so it wasn't like we were just kind of throwing it out in the air to see what would happen. We really pushed it, and we got no responses. And so after like 2 weeks, Kaylee's like, we have to change this to Tagalog. I know Ilocano is very important to you, but like we don't have any cast members for the Filipino side. So we switched it to Tagalog, and within 24 hours, we had like almost 700 responses. It was amazing. But the question is, why didn't we get any Ilocano responses? And actually, 2 of the 3 boys are native Ilocano speakers, but they weren't the original people cast. A whole side story. But why did nobody respond? Well, in my view, it's because boys love in the Philippines is used by gay cinema to market gay cinema, even though boys love and gay cinema are slightly different things. And so I think what was happening was Ilocano speaking actors were seeing it and they were thinking that they were being cast for soft porn. And the Ilocano community is very tight-knit and insular. And I think in some ways people were like, oh, I don't want my breakout role to be like soft porn. So we got no responses. So we had to change it to Tagalog, and then we got a million responses because, of course, Tagalog is the basis of the national language in the Philippines. So we weren't targeting just one small community. We're targeting basically anybody who identifies as Filipino. And 2 of the 3 actors ended up being Ilocano that we cast, even though speaking Ilocano, I guess they themselves didn't see it, and so that's why they didn't respond.
It was very interesting doing my research and learning about it because I didn't know about the different kind of subsets they had from there. And it is very different. And I kind of could see where the confusion could come there. I think that makes sense. So, and talk about this. It's very much let people know who haven't got the pleasure to see it, like I hasn't seen it in the film festival circuit. Give them the basic story and this great combining of these cultures. It was just amazingly.
Sure. So it's basically a story about 2 high school seniors at Lahaina Luna High School. And they, one is from a native Hawaiian family, and the other one is from an immigrant Filipino family. And their friend groups are in conflict with each other over the ways that the Filipino kids are interacting with natural resources. That the Hawaiian kids, that their families have basically struggled to recreate or to conserve, that were threatened. And so the storyline starts with this adversarial friend group story, and it's a boys' love story. So if you know anything about boys' love, then don't need to explain too much about the plot, but that basically there's this unconscious move of moving together because their social studies teacher forces them to work on their semester project together. And so in that, they basically learn about each other and learn about each other's cultures and how very similar in many ways their life stories are.
It's just a beautiful, thoughtful tale of the 2 cultures coming together. Beautifully shot. I mean, the scenery, of course, when you think of it, and now this happened pre-fire, right? Kind of talk to me about the actual layout of the land, so to speak, because this was showcasing the beauty of the land, and then you had this fire. Talk about how that, that happened luckily after the filming, but how sad was that to have to endure?
The original purpose of the grant was to show a slice of life of West Maui, but I think the intention of it was to show how humans live in West Maui. But what ended up happening because of the fire is that actually now we get to see what West Maui looked like before August 8th. Definitely the aerial shots and, of course, all of the locations that were in the movie, except for the beach scenes and the mountain scenes. All of the inhabited areas that you see in the film were all burnt down. 10,000 buildings, 10,000 people were displaced, and over 2,000 homes and I think 1,500 commercial structures burned. And so Lahaina town no longer exists. And so, it was very sad. And after the fire, Kaylee and I talked, and we talked with some of the folks in the community, and we decided that actually it was important that because we were just beginning the festival circuit when that happened. And we thought, well, you know what, we'll continue doing this, one, so that there is, something visual that can help people remember their happy memories of Lahaina and West Maui, and also that we could then use our festival platform to, educate people about the ongoing problems that Lahaina people are having because of the fires and the disaster response
Right.
that happened. And we did do that. And so that was something that we did. And, the survivors who have seen the movie were very thankful that we've done it and that it's available. So, yeah, I mean, it's very, very sad what happened, and people are still suffering. Many survivors are still displaced. Nothing has been rebuilt in Lahaina yet. So, that is ongoing. And this is sort of a snapshot of basically happy memories just before the fire.
Yeah, it's like a living time capsule. I was telling you off air, my uncle lived in Lahaina, and my brother went and lived with him for a short time, for about a year and a half or so. And he had kind of like a plantation type estate or whatever, very small. But just the pictures were gorgeous that my brother would send and my uncle would send of the area there, and that's no longer anymore. So to have this kind of record of it along with such a beautiful, touching story to go with it, that serves such a dual purpose. So congratulations on record keeping. I mean, as sad as the situation is, you got to congratulate yourself that you were able to get that in there and have that kind of piece of history to go on.
Yeah.
How involved were you in the actual filming of it? Did you go on set while it was filming? You said you were in connection with the director, obviously. So talk about what your involvement was on the actual filming side.
So yeah, I have I have a job in the courts that I don't have control over my schedule entirely. So there were a couple of days where I had to be at court and I couldn't be on shooting, but actually because of some COVID and some other issues, our shooting got pushed back. And then Kaipo, the main Hawaiian lead, had a stage play because he's a community theater guy in Honolulu that he was doing. And so he could only shoot from like Sundays to Wednesdays. So we actually had to completely rearrange our shooting, and we shot over a month, but it was 16 days of shooting, but we could only shoot like 3 or 4 days a week. So that made it convenient for me because then it was easier to be there. So I was at most of the shooting days, and then about maybe a week in or so, Kaylee's like, nobody in the crew really knows Tagalog, but I think the guys are like changing their lines. So can you put on a headset and can you monitor that? Because like we need them to stay as close to, and they did. As soon as I put it on, it was like they were completely rewriting every
Oh, that's funny.
So I had to like, oh, no, retake this. No, you need to use this phrase. Don't do that, because 2 scenes from now, what you say at this moment in this way is going to affect that. So I had to do a little bit of reeling in and negotiating with them. And so I ended up sort of being a Tagalog script supervisor in a way. And it was fun. I mean, the guys were great. And that was one of the things about this experience that was a little bit different than my past experience with film, was that like all of the crew really liked each other. All of the cast, many of them first-time film people, they all were really like, they all liked each other, and everybody was like very excited to be there. And so people would like show up like an hour before the call time just to hang out. And then people would stay after everything was broken down just to hang out. And it was like the vibe was really great. And I wish every film thing that anybody ever does has that experience, because it was a fun thing to be around.
I love hearing about sets like that. I mean, the film industry right now is so increasingly kind of interested in stories from underrepresented cultures. This had to be such a touch point from them. How do you hope to continue kind of growing this cultural experience? Are you now interested in more writing now that you found you can do this in 6 weeks? If you had 6 months to a year, are you interested in maybe pursuing this more?
So my sort of mea culpa to the Ilocano speaking community, by changing it to Tagalog, was I said, well, I have this other story that I wrote 15 years ago, and now I'm going to see it through. And I did, because in June in the Philippines, we shot what is going to be a web series in Ilocano, a boys love web series, hopefully coming out early next year. Jade Castro is the director. So yes, I'm very excited in this, and I would love to have people with money give us money to make more of these stories. I mean, I'm ready to do a girls' love story set in Honolulu with a martial arts theme, but I need cash. So,
Nice.
but
I
yeah,
love
we've
that.
got lots of stories to tell about Hawaii, and there's many different aspects of Hawaii history and issues in Hawaii that we would love to tell stories of. Just have to find the money to do it. So,
Content heavy and cash poor. Isn't that the way the business goes? I'm
yes,
telling you.
exactly.
Oh, but congratulations on that. And Jake is a very good filmmaker. So that's kind of, I know who that is. So
Oh, yeah.
fantastic on that. Wow, very cool. And talk about the cast. You said it seems like that, as you said, they kind of came together where they wanted to hang out before and after. Was going into this kind of a theme and everything, everyone kind of on board together? Was there any coaxing on anything? How was the theme overall with everybody and everyone's support and buy-in into it?
So I guess everybody really liked the storyline, because otherwise they wouldn't have participated. But yeah, it was. It just. I guess we were all a little surprised that everybody just gelled so well together, and people were going to karaoke on off times, and people became friends. Many of the cast members are now part of the same friend groups and stuff. And yeah, it was just it was a surprise. It was wonderful. It didn't take any coaxing. We had a table read, and it was like you just saw it was like all of the Legos just click together. And actually, I should say that in the movie there's a song in Tagalog that was sung by Charisse, and she plays Mai Mai, the cousin. She wrote that at the table read, and it was based on how J-Ron, when he first met Kaipo, he was very shy, and I guess found him to be very attractive. And so he was telling her oh, I can't really look at him in the eye and blah, blah, blah. And so she wrote a song, and that's the song when they're talking on their, in their beds over the phone.
Right.
She wrote that song, her and the one who plays Cedric, he helped, and I kind of helped a little bit too. And yeah, and then our sound person was the engineer who recorded it.
That's amazing. I love that. Well, I like I said, I fall in love with this movie. I fall in love with the cast. I reached out to J-Ron over social media, and he answered me. Kaipo hasn't, but I'm hoping to have J-Ron on the show sometime soon to help promote it and just to talk about his experience. But I just think it was portrayed so beautifully and so well written, and just the whole thing. I love learning about the culture, and it was just such a great love letter to both cultures. And you got to be very proud of yourself for that, my friend.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, well, I love the movie. I've watched it everywhere that it is screened almost. I didn't go to Mexico. Kaleo, who plays Kona, is the one who went to Mexico. But almost every film festival I went to, and I've sat with the audience, and I feel very humbled by it, and I'm also very touched that people have reactions to basically my life story that's been completely rearranged into this movie.
I love that. Well, what do you hope the takeaway is for my partner, and what is the actual takeaway you're seeing at all these screenings? What was your kind of hope from the beginning, and what have you kind of witnessed at these screenings?
Well, yeah, I mean, the big hope, which is what we got the funding for, was so that people could understand, how we live in Hawaii. But not just that, but also this thing that's very important about this working class history, which is when the workers unite, they can accomplish anything. And when they are divided, then all you get is a lot of conflict and suffering. And so that, I think, is the main takeaway that hopefully people get by it. Sometimes they get completely mesmerized by the cinematography. So sometimes they don't quite consciously get to where we want to take them in terms of the actual storyline. But that being said, I think people generally and all over the world in slightly different ways do get that main message, which is that, when people paddle together in the same direction, they'll eventually all accomplish the goal, which is to get to shore.
Well said. I absolutely I love the scene talking about learning about the customs and learning about the gift for the shower and everything and making the lei. That was such a beautiful shot, and you just kind of feel everything kind of the catalyst starting to move from there. So so well written, my friend. Congratulations. That's great.
Thank you.
All right. Well, Lance Collins, remind everyone when it's going to be starting to stream, where they can find this, and where they can follow you guys all on social media.
Sure. So it's going to be supposed to be out on video on demand everywhere on September 24th, although it's actually already available for streaming on Gaga Ulala, which is the Asian LGBTQ streaming platform. So yeah, that somehow got to jump the queue. I don't know how, but it did, and it's available now. So, but then everywhere else that's going to be it'll start rolling out on September 24th, and you can check us out or get updated on what the next thing is on Instagram and Facebook. It's my partner movie is where we're at. So yeah, just check out where we're at, and we are having a couple more in-person screenings that I'm aware of, and we would love to have a limited theatrical run. We're still working on that, but yeah, we're definitely be streaming, and yeah, hope people are interested and watch it.
I love that. I don't think Northeast Ohio is on the schedule, but I'll have to make a reason to get back to Hawaii. I haven't been there in 6 years now or so. It's been quite a long time. So,
yeah.
Well, Lance Collins, I appreciate getting to know you. You're going to have to come back as these other projects start happening. We're going to play the fun 5 questions with Lance next week. Thanks so much for your time today. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, guys. Well, stay tuned, and we will see you next time right here on Left of Str8 Show Interviews. Have a great week, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to the Left of Str8 Show. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast distributor, and please give us a 5-star rating so more listeners can find us. You can follow us on social media, and be sure to check out our website for contests and other news and information. See you next week.